burning bituminous coal, soft coal. I've got a blower blowing air through it. That's what makes it so hot. Charcoal was the original blacksmithing fuel for the first 2,500 years of blacksmithing or so.
James!
That is sweet.
These guys might be old enough to remember. I remember well when I was a boy reading outdoor magazines and things. And pretty regularly you'd run across an advertisement for a knife or something, and one of their sales pitches would be made with genuine Swedish steel. Remember that? I think there was a razor blade company that included that in their ad. Well, there's a reason for that. Swedish steel, all the way up into the early 1900s, mid-1900s, really was considered the best steel in the world. And there was a very simple reason for it. The Swedish were the last people to refine their iron with charcoal instead of coal. So it was a much cleaner steel. The main thing about that is coal contains a lot of sulfur. Sulfur is very bad for steel. Charcoal has no appreciable sulfur, so it made a better steel.
So why they stop it?
One of you guys that got here when I first came out, if you can remember, try to count how much stuff I dropped today. I think I'm going to set a record, even for me. If you know what a horseshoe rasp is, I just finished, that's a prototype. I just finished that out of a horseshoe rasp. Any of you kids don't know what that is? That's like a fingernail file for horses. You knew that, didn't you? What you see falling off of there is called scale. It's like souped up rust. When you heat that steel to forging temperature, the surface of it oxidizes very quickly. If you watch that in the shadow till it quits glowing, just as it quits glowing, it's about 900 degrees. This is not like you ladies cooking supper either. I have to pay attention. I don't have a smoke alarm to tell me when I need to run in and check stuff. You understand that, don't you, Sophie? Absolutely. 4 out of 4 doing that. And I figured out why. Just a second. This is called striking while the iron is hot. If you're not married, that may not be real significant for you yet, but you'll understand it someday. By the way, the side of that hammer I was using is called peen. This is a cross peen. It's a straight peen, ball peen. The reason I used it for what I did then, first of all, if you notice, when I started on that, I turned the point down. As I work, you'll see that point move up. That's because as I hammer this cutting edge and that metal spreads, it's got to go somewhere, so it pushes the tip of that knife up. With that peen, I can direct which way I move that metal. Now, back to your question. I tried heating just the edge and quenching. We were talking before most of you got here. To get these spikes as hard as I want them, I'm using the fastest quench commonly available. The speed of the quench is what determines how hard that steel, well, all other things being equal would be more accurate. All other things being equal, how fast you cool that steel determines how hard it will get, or if it gets hard. I'm using the fastest quench commonly available, and I qualify it with that commonly because there may be something somewhere in a lab I'm not familiar with, but it's the fastest quench commonly available. The faster your quench, the more violent it is to the steel. There is a Japanese sword maker on YouTube that took a big glass aquarium. Anybody seen that, where he quenches the samurai sword in a glass aquarium? And there's a camera. The reason he didn't use the glass aquarium, there's a cameraman set up filming this. And when he quenched that sword, of course we're talking about a sword that was maybe 40 inches long. When he quenches that sword, the back is clay, which is traditional Japanese. When he quenches it, you can't believe your eyes when you see what happens. The tip of that sword drops, I'm guessing, 4 inches. I don't mean he tilts it. I mean the blade warps, if you will, probably 4 inches down. And then as it cools and that transformation takes place in the steel, it goes back not only to where it was, but maybe 4 inches past where it was. So the tip of that sword travels a total of maybe 6 to 8 inches, all because of those thermal stresses in that steel. If you want a graphic illustration of what I'm trying to talk about, that is a real good video clip. Now obviously something like this isn't going to flex that much because it's too short, but it flexes nevertheless. And that expansion and contraction is what causes those cracks. Now still some micro fractures elsewhere in that blade that you can't see, but those will be a weak place in that blade. If you had an 8-inch blade and it cracked within 2 inches of the tip, you might grind it off and make a shorter knife out of it. I don't. I pitch it. See that tip moving up? That's what I was talking about earlier. A few minutes ago, one of the advantages of a custom-made knife is a differential heat treatment. Another benefit of a custom-made knife is what's called distal taper. If you look at one of our knives, any of our knives inside, you'll see that blade tapers gradually all the way from the handle to the tip. When you look at a factory-made knife, factory-made knives, because of the way they're mass-produced, the only taper in that blade will probably be right out toward the tip. The reason that matters is, if any of you shoot archery, look at a bow sometime, look at the limbs on an archery bow, and they'll taper, or a leaf spring. If the individual leaf spring doesn't taper, then the stack of springs, the leaf, will taper. That taper makes those springs much stronger and much more resilient. To know what is valid, there's so much organic fertilizer on on the internet, and especially on YouTube, that when somebody y'all doing? How are you boys?
You're on camera.
I try not to say anything that I wouldn't mind saying off camera. I learned that in my last profession. I'm a retired cop.
Oh.
After Rodney King, you assumed everybody had a camera. How are you, young lady? Where are you folks from? Organic fertilizer. That's pretty civilized for a